But if you do need something, you can chat. If you chat, everyone in the room will also see it. So just keep that in mind as well. I think that's it for logistics. So we'll go on to the approval of minutes. I would like to take them separately if we can. And starting with the July 8th, 2020 minutes that have been put in front of everyone. The reason I want to take them separately is I do have an amendment to the minutes for July 8th to indicate that Member Duval was present for the meeting. So I would need a motion that includes an amendment, amending the minutes to indicate that Member Duval was present.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the minutes as written and amend them to include John Duval in them as being present
For July 8th.
for July 8th.
2020. Okay? I have a motion by Jim.
I'll second.
I have a second by Rick. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? Okay. It's now official, John, you were there.
Thank you.
And so that leaves the July 15th, 2020 minutes. And again, all members of the board can vote on those.
Make a motion, we waive a reading of the minutes and accept them as provided for July 15th, 2020.
Okay, I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Jim. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. That brings us to public comment. Is there anyone on the call that wishes to speak to the board about a matter not on the agenda this evening? Hearing none. Okay. We will go ahead and move on to new business. The first item under new business is the ratification of Financial Assistant 2, Christina Sacco. You have a letter in your packet from the Treasurer Collector to the Town Administrator, as well as a letter from the Town Administrator to the Board. I'll read that letter. Dear Chairman Hoyt, this letter is to advise the Board of Selectmen that subject to the Board's ratification as provided in Section 10 of the Town Charter, Christina Sacco has been appointed to the position of Financial Assistant 2 for the Treasurer Collector's Office. Ms. Sacco has the right blend of accounting / bookkeeping / cash handling experience and excellent customer service skills for this critical constituent-facing position. She will begin her duties on or about August 17, 2020 at the grade 6, step 3 rate of $19.06 per hour upon completion of any pending hiring requirements respectfully submitted by the Town Administrator. Jay, is there anything that you wanted to add about the ratification of this position?
If you want to just perhaps read Collector Rice's letter, it sums up nice summation.
Certainly. Treasurer Collector Kelly Rice indicates to the Town Administrator, as you are aware, the Financial Assistant 2 position became available in May. After 4 interviews last week, I would like to recommend Christina Sacco to the position. Christina interviewed with a passion to serve our community. Her background and financial knowledge for the past 19 years will be an asset to my department. Christina is energetic, friendly, and eager to start her new position within the town. Her confidence and positive, upbeat attitude will be helpful with serving the public. It is anticipated that Christina will start on or about August 17th at a grade 6, step 3 at $19.06 an hour. And if any additional information is needed regarding this request, do not hesitate to contact the Treasurer Collector.
So as Kelly said in her letter, we interviewed 4 individuals, and the interview panel was myself, Town Accountant Mary Beverly, as well as Treasurer Collector Rice. And we did do a position assessment to determine the business need for the position, if we needed to restore the position, if we were going to downgrade the position to part-time, et cetera. And the collective decision was made that it is an integral position to town operations and would be hired eventually at full-time with benefits once the rest of the support staff were brought on. So this position right now is advertised at 19 hours with no benefits, with the potential for becoming full-time again at 35 hours with benefits. We anticipate that potentially happening sometime in August once the town accountant and I and the budget subcommittee meet to determine what we look like for fiscal '21.
All right, what is the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to ratify the appointment of Christina Sadko to the position of Financial Assistant 2 for the Treasurer's Collector's Office to be started on or about August 17, 2020 at the grade 6, step 3 rate of $19.06 per hour upon completion of any pending hiring requirements.
Okay, I have a motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. Welcome to the team,
We'll have Christina come in and introduce herself to the board at some point.
Wonderful, thank you. So the next item, we've talked a little bit in a couple of different meetings about some of the town services that have been able to make a transition online during the last several months, and had asked the town administrator if he could give us an update as to the town services that are currently provided online. And I know that there are still some discussions with department heads about what could come online in the future and what people are working on, and maybe you can touch upon that as well. So I'll turn things over to Jay.
So based on my conversation with the board, certain board members, as well as what I gathered from everyone's interest, I distilled the questions down to 4 questions that I asked the department heads. How does each department conduct its business presently with the buildings closed? What services does each department make available online or in other remote format, that being e-forms, mail, Dropbox, etc.? And what services are not available except for in-person only? 3, is it possible to expand a department's respective online or remote services? And 4, if so, what is needed to do that and what would be the cost? In addition to those 4 questions, I just broke down for the department heads essentially to tackle 1 and 2 for this meeting and to think thoroughly about 3 and 4 before we move forward. Some folks did respond as to 3 and 4, but tonight's report will just focus on what are we doing now and how is it working. I'm glad that Madam Clerk is joined us tonight, because I think she perhaps can just give a little first-hand knowledge when I'm done. She's one of the more forward-facing constituent-based departments that we have, so she can give you a pretty good slice as to how things are working. Essentially, the DPW, we have an online contact point, essentially lodge your feedback here. That goes right to Marilyn Colas, our admin assistant, and Director Tober. So we take some feedback regarding problems, et cetera, with infrastructure through that format. Of course, email and phone is available through DPW. Certain permits that are requested, such as the trench permit and other things that DPW does specifically, has to be done in person, but those requests come in electronically, an appointment is made, and then the individual inspectors go out and deal with that. Town clerk, again, all the vital records forms are available online. The town clerk staff will meet by appointment if needed, but the primary method of communication at this point is via voice, phone, mail, email, etc. All of the voter online information is also there, and there were no issues with the last election where a large percentage of people did vote in person, and perhaps Haley can go a little bit into more detail, but essentially any transaction that the public may need with town clerk is available either online or by phone with the office, with a transaction that can be distant, or it can be just simply meeting somebody out front, socially distanced with a mask, etc., using the Dropbox. Veteran Services reports as well that their office is operating normally, even with the building being closed. They use email, mail, fax, and the Dropbox to exchange documents. Also, the Department of Veteran Services in Boston has a very robust online system. So Director Roy indicates that he has no issues at this point communicating with his constituent base, and that's true for the other communities that share Mr. Roy's duties. The town administrator and selectmen's office, Deb is doing everything via Dropbox, mail, email, or phone. She works the phones on a regular basis. We haven't had any issues. I received the random constituent inquiry either by phone or by email. I respond when I can, but most of that goes through Deb, so we have not had any issues either. For the larger issues such as developers or roadmap to ribbon cutting, anything along those lines, I'll make the appointment and meet accordingly where needed. We had a meeting today that worked out just fine. We'll use the mahogany room or my office depending upon how many people we have. Council on Aging, again, a primary constituent forward-facing department. Erica and her staff has done a tremendous job of trying to balance public health and still deliver services to that demographic. She's meeting by appointment. If they meet by appointment, she has a face mask requirement, and they installed portable plexiglass screens at their desks in order to conduct a private conversation if need be. She has limited attendance, so she's still able to offer some sessions, and she'll do that in multiple sessions because of the attendance requirement is tight. And of course, we had the tent up. We had to take the tent down out of safety because of the tropical storm Isaiah that came through yesterday. So that tent will go back up, but she's doing a lot of the activities outside, and she does some inside with the attendance limitations, just offering those sessions more frequently. She too has a drop box set up outside the building. There's a doorbell and an outdoor document holder to pass items on. Erica answered all the questions in the affirmative. She says it's worked very well. If there's anything that our constituents request is they miss the social interaction of being able to sit and have lunch. And that's just something that unfortunately this pandemic has driven a wedge in between. The assessor's office is operating much like the other offices, by appointment, by a phone, email, web inquiry. However, Assessor McDonald indicates that this has shown her that more information from the assessor's office should be put online on the webpage, and she'll be looking into that as well. The Treasurer Collector's office, constituents can pay both excise and real estate online. Our fees for doing so have been waived and continue to be waived. Most of the forms that the Treasurer Collector's office uses, particularly the transfer station, annual permit fees, that form is available online. Folks can mail in their payment or drop off their payment to the drop box. An exchange is made, and the office sends out the stickers and the bag tags as well. So all of that information is available online. So that's a snapshot in terms of what we're doing now. We have not received any constituent complaints. I have checked with some of our other sister communities statewide. Majority of town offices are still closed statewide. It's case by case, town by town, and most people have reported that constituents have understood and everyone is functioning remotely pretty well. It doesn't mean we can't look to expand and figure out what to do more. I did not have a chance to speak with inspectional services specifically about this, but I can tell you that both building and health, most of that initial conversation is done online via our online permitting process, which the town has had in place now for a while, and by appointment, the inspectors go out. And Haley, I don't know if Haley wanted to offer firsthand what her experience has been like.
Sure, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so far, everything's been going really well with having the building closed. Like Jay had mentioned, we do everything via phone, email, Dropbox, mail, and occasionally we will accommodate someone by meeting at the front door as long as we wear our masks and they wear their masks. It seems to be really working. We've certainly seen an uptick in vital records, specifically birth certificates now. There was a really big lull from March until probably the middle of June, but that was due to the fact that the R&B was closed. So now people are calling, requesting their birth certificates. So we're just, trying to accommodate them the best that we can. And most of the time we just meet them at the front door and exchange, and it's been working really well. So everything else seems to be working okay as far as like birth certificates, business certificates and like dog licenses. We've been doing those through Dropbox, via mail. Occasionally somebody will show up at the door and give us a call, and we're more than happy to accommodate them, so the best that we can. So far we've really had no complaints.
Haley, if somebody does not have a printer at home, they can access, the form online, but they don't necessarily have a printer. Are you able to accommodate a request of that nature, and how would you go about accommodating that?
Definitely. It's specifically for either birth deaths or marriages, we just ask them to just write down what they exactly need. Most of the time, they give us a call anyways, and we don't even require them to fill out the form. We just ask that they just jot it down on a piece of paper and let us know what they need, and we're more than happy to accommodate. Same thing with dog licenses, too. You know, just drop the rabies in the drop box or in the mail, and we're more than happy to, you know, gather the rest of the information. So, anything we can do to help.
Appreciate that. Questions from the board? Anything for the town administrator or for town clerk?
Yeah, I have
Go ahead, John.
I have a question. I brought this up before in regards to when you're paying your real estate taxes online. And first of all, thank you for all that information, and it's good to see that we are still able to offer all of our services to the community, although some may be limited because of the pandemic, but that's great to hear. When you do your excise tax, if you want to pay it online, there's a fee to be paid when you do that. And I've done that before. Fee is minimal, no problem. Then I attempted to pay my real estate taxes online, and when the fee came up, it was hundreds of dollars for the fee. So that was the end of that real quick, came down, paid my real estate taxes. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that has come across this issue. I would have thought there would be a standard fee for your excise tax and your real estate taxes, but it appears that the formula just does a percentage of the total that's due. I'm not sure, but is that something that we're going to take a look at and fix?
In the future? Because
Yeah.
right now the fee is waived.
Right, so the fee is waived. How would I know that when I go online to pay my taxes? And all of a sudden I see it costs $400, I don't know. I would think most people would not pay that amount, but it's like $400, for example, and all of a sudden they do it for some reason, just, I don't know, not thinking or whatever. But how do people know that? Because I stopped and decided to come into the office and pay it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been through that situation, so. How do people, does it say, it doesn't say online that it's waived, right?
Those are all questions for Treasurer Rice
Okay. All right.
to do with. I know the platform is an independent platform that's shared with other
Right.
communities use it. And I believe the fees are based on the use of it. Right now, for example, the fees are still being charged, but the town is paying them because we're requiring everybody essentially almost to use the service. So in good faith, we're not going to require people to pay the fee. But down the road, even in normal times, it's very convenient if you happen to work certain hours where you can't get to the point where you're in the building when the building is open, generally 8 to 5. So it's definitely something for Kelly to look into and see if that's something we just need to budget for to change, or what other systems are out there that may not charge as much, or a flat transaction fee.
Thank you.
And Jay, the town is tracking those
Yes.
expenses right now and for reimbursement
Correct.
as part of the CARES
So
Act, correct?
It's a COVID-19 related expense, and that's covered by our CARES Act grant.
Okay.
The other comment I will make too is, we've gone case by case, office by office, and as each department head has worked with, in addition to limited building hours, they've also worked with limited support staff hours, because if you remember, we did furlough a bunch of our staff when we knew we were going to face a potential budgetary crisis, as well as for health reasons, to keep people not in the building for a particular period of time. The health reasons have dissipated, notwithstanding proper social distancing, working within the building, and sanitation procedures, but we still had some concerns from a budgetary standpoint. However, for example, the clerk's office is now being asked with the mail-in election forms for voting, so the town clerk asked me to assess that. We did. We brought that person back full-time. The assessor's office they're still in the middle of transition from their older system to the new property card system, so I authorized that to come back. It's a little easier to do that now because we have a better handle, as you know, on what our fiscal 21 state aid number is going to be, but we've done that case by case, office by office, on a business need only. So I just want to be sure the board understands it's not arbitrary who is and who isn't, as much as it's a demonstrated business need by the department head where they need to bring back that support staff person to full-time service.
Other questions for Jay? Yeah, go ahead.
This one, you said we know now our 21 numbers.
Yep.
Am I right in that it's level funded from 20?
Yes. Yep, I'll talk about that in my TA report.
Okay.
Anything else? We have another department head in the room. Chief, did you have anything you wanted to add with regard to online services at this point? I know you're still getting up to speed, so I don't want to totally put you on the spot, but I also want to give you an opportunity since one other department head spoke. Sorry.
Thank you. We do have some online services. We actually have two different websites. We have the town website and we have the police department website. And a lot of the services that are offered on the police department website are really outdated. They need to be overhauled. Some of them no longer are valid. I think they date back to Governor Romney on some of the letterheads. So they need to be fixed. So those are all things we're working on. But being open 24 hours a day, a lot of people just will come in and get the things that they need instead of go to the website. But yeah, so we're doing pretty good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being open to being called out. That's what happens when you're in the room. If there are no other questions with regard to town services, we can move on because there's no action to take on that.
Just a report.
Just a report. Member Duval, I will ask the treasurer collector your questions about the fees.
Thank you.
And get you an answer. Okay, so that'll bring us to item 3 under new business, or item C, review and approval of the revised tag sale permit application. At our July, I think, 15th meeting, we talked about tag sales and kept a moratorium on tag sales. However, there were some questions about the permit application, and there were some suggestions from this board to add some language into the permit application, especially with regard to, I think, Member Novak had asked about the signs to like have an end date for when people post signs and to give more clarification as to where people could post them. So you'll see on the tag sale application that was put together, I appreciate Deb Dunlap and Mark Blaisdell's work on this. They did put together 9 rules and regulations that are on the application. I think some were there, but they did take the advice or suggestions from this board and added them in there. So it does indicate that the hours of operation for tag sale would be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Again, that's when tag sales will be allowed in the town of Adams. Currently, we are not allowing them. No more than 4 consecutive days, twice per address per calendar year. No notices, advertising, or directional signs are to be attached to utility poles, nor shade trees per Mass General Law, Chapter 87, Section 9. All notices shall be removed after last sale date. Number 4, event shall not be held at a location whereby it interferes with, impedes, or obstructs motor vehicle traffic, or where parking is restricted or prohibited. Event also shall not jeopardize public safety or interfere with pedestrian passage upon sidewalks. 5, this license shall be posted in a conspicuous place during the sale. 6, selling food is prohibited under the Board of Health regulations. 7, no items shall be left on the curb or property and shall be removed no later than 24 hours after sale. 8, licenses are valid on the rain date if the original sale dates are canceled due to weather. And you'll see at the top, there is a date of tag sale and rain dates that they are supposed to list. Number 9, all special restrictions, requirements, or health guidelines attached must be adhered to. And you'll see that the health and safety standards that are in accordance with the governor's orders with regard to gathering, wearing masks, sanitation, etc., are attached. There are 6 items there. The first permit is listed at $2, with all other permits thereafter at $5. And penalty is $50 fine per offense for tag sale without a permit and/or violations of rules and regulations. Any warning issued is at the discretion of the enforcement officer. So I think we talked about on July 15th that we would bring this application back for the board to take a look at at our August 5th meeting, and so that is what is in front of you tonight. I know it does say review and approval of revised tag sale permit application. However, if someone wanted a second reading, we could do so, or we could approve it. It's not a policy per se, but I know that that's always an option. Yes, Member
Question
Bennett.
on number 3,
Yep.
for utility poles, is that considered, are you considering our light poles, like the decorative light poles on Park Street?
I would consider that a utility, but I don't know.
I would recommend, if that's the board's intention, to be specific about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to add that. And I hate to see that, packing tape signs
Yep.
stuck up there, and, because that stuff does not come off.
Okay.
And remember, just one point to this, the permit fee is $2. And I would still recommend to the board, you might want to review that fee. And all others are $5 beyond the 2. Perhaps you want to invert that. The reason I say that is because time has now been taken to review this application. We're now aware that this is an aesthetic issue, frankly, for the town, and potentially damaging some of our decorative light poles with the tape and things like that. Monitoring these regs will require some time from the zoning officer, because it's under zoning enforcement. So it's just, we'll never get that. You're never going to be, public service is not necessarily, going to make that money back, but the point is, we want to enforce these regs. We're going to have to spend some time with inspectional services to do that. Also, sometimes tag sales are most often on weekends. So just keep that in mind, that that's how we're going to have to do this.
Yep. Member Bush. Hold on. You need a microphone. Sorry, Tom.
While we're addressing signage on telephone poles for tag sales, we're almost due to the time where Gillette Shows is going to be showing up in Berkshire County. And they come, just like the tag sellers, wrap the duct tape around the pole of their signs. The signs stay there from August till God only knows when the weather takes them off. I think the signage, that should probably be added to signage in here, even though it's not a tag sale. It's a business coming to town. It's a yearly problem with these people, and it makes the town look disgusting.
We'll have to look into that. Okay? Other items? Questions, comments?
Just
Go ahead.
briefly to add a revision history to this form. That,
Revision history?
yeah, that the data was, approved, and a revision, so if someone made 10 copies and we changed things, that they'll have the latest revision of this form.
Like to state it on the bottom?
Yeah, the
You're
bottom,
talking-
one
yeah.
of the bottom corners, yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
Oh, good point. Other comments? Questions? Since there are a couple of additions to the form, I won't ask for a vote on this. We'll just bring this to another meeting with some of these changes. If there is consensus that we would like to review the permit fees, we can add that to an upcoming agenda as well. I'm seeing some nodding heads. That would also give us some time to take a look at any penalties with regard to signage for other events and items outside of tag sales and how those are addressed. So we can bring that back. Okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, go
You
ahead.
might want to look into it. I think that kind of signage might fall under the zoning board,
I'm thinking of...
because they have, I think, jurisdiction over signage on public way. I mean, we can authorize it, I guess, but
Right.
if they already have a bylaw that it's just not being enforced.
But I know when we're looking at doing the banners for fallen heroes, if we went off town poles, we would have to pay a rental fee for that pole through Verizon or whomever, and they're going down, right down there, I mean, yourself, they're nailing every other pole. So, I mean, that's an issue with Verizon also. But it does make the town look pretty dumpy. It wouldn't be bad if they took them down after, but they don't. I think there's still one on the corner of Church Street and Cheshire on the pole.
I don't even know if they're going to be able to, I think those types of shows have been prohibited.
I believe they have been.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, okay.
All right. If there's nothing else on tag sales, move on to the next item. So the next two items are job descriptions. These were both presented to the Personnel Subcommittee last week, I think, 2 weeks ago. It was a day that ended in Y, that's all I remember these days. But the Community Development Director job description and Emergency Management Director job description, as the board is aware, there is most likely some changes in those departments and in particular those two positions within most likely the calendar year, but probably the fiscal year. And so we started to take a look at those two job descriptions in the Personnel Subcommittee. The first one is the Community Development Director. There were some modifications made to the job description as this had not been updated since 2004. Jade, anything in particular? I know it was just a matter of cleaning it up and reflecting what the office is doing versus what it was doing in 2004, but is there anything you wanted to highlight for the board, or John, if there was anything from that meeting you wanted to highlight with regard to this job description?
It's a comprehensive job description. It covers a lot of bases. It essentially covers everything that Director Season has been doing. It's a lot. It shows exactly how important that position is to a town like Adams. But I think it's broad enough and wide enough that when the time comes to recruit, we'll have, ample, we're covering every base possible essentially with the job description. Some of it is, you'll see some of it in here could be carved out for another position such as Economic Development Director, but we don't have those positions right now. So the decision is let's put in the job description what this person will be expected to do. It doesn't mean they'll spend a lot of time doing it, it just means that that is a potential function of the job.
I think some of the things that were added in were like the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, which was not part of the job description in 2004, directing the town's MS4 Stormwater Management Program administered by EPA, and then trying to think a couple of the other.
There's a paragraph, a couple of sentences on page 2, developing a media public relations protocol using a variety of media platforms to promote development projects, initiatives, and to attract business investment. The board many times, particularly Member Duval has mentioned, it's very helpful to have an inventory of available buildings. So when people call up, cold call, hey, Town of Adams, what do you know is available within your boundaries for this? We've got that. Well, essentially, the way that we've worked community development, because of our staffing turnover, the community development department's handled economic development, community development, and infrastructure. In a perfect world, in municipal operation, you'd have an economic development staffer handling the economic development side. Community development would handle community development. Those would be your projects, your standard programming, your CDBG program, et cetera. And then you'd have your DPW director and engineering staff handling your infrastructure projects. We're not necessarily set up that way. We attempted to do that with the DPW director job description. We weren't able to recruit that. Director Tober has some skill sets, but he hasn't been here long enough to absorb the long history and the fact that right now community development is entrenched in those projects, and it would delay those projects if we shifted. So once again, we just wanted to be sure that those duties are included in this job description in case we decide to keep that format. Gives us flexibility to move around, but you can see it's quite the position.
John, do you have anything to add from the committee meeting that you wanted to?
No, I think you both have covered it very well. I'll just make the motion to approve the Community Development Director job description as presented.
I have a motion by John.
I'll second it.
I have a second by Jim. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd just like to say, I'm sure that we'll be getting a chance to thank Donna for our work, but she is certainly a person that's going to be missed. I think she's put a lot of butter on our bread, and
Yep, she hasn't left yet, and she
Right.
won't for some time into the fall.
yep.
I've got her chained to her desk pretty well.
But yep, when the time comes, that is something that we will be
Okay.
certainly doing.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments about the job description? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. That brings us to the Emergency Management Director position. This is actually a new job description, as we had not had one in the past. Jay, you actually went over this pretty well with personnel, so do you want to just give an overview of?
Sure. When we started looking at job descriptions, job positions, see how we were structured, particularly with our public safety team, we realized we didn't have a job description for emergency management director, so I tasked Deb with doing some research on language for a job description, so we started there. I added my language to it, and this was one of the first tasks that Chief Bacon jumped in on and reviewed it as well. It's fairly comprehensive, it's consistent with other communities, and you'll see throughout the job description that there's a lot of language in here that involves coordinating and collaborating. We're a small town, even though we're the third largest community in the Berkshires, but this health pandemic, as well as some of our larger natural disasters, have really shown that we need to be collaborative. The town of Adams alone can't afford all the resources that we may need, nor frankly some of our brother and sister communities as well. So you'll see that in here is that language of collaborate and coordinate. Some of the key tasks are training, filing plans, keeping our plans updated, managing those plans, and the all-important grant search to find available funds for Adams, as well as working with other communities to pool those grant funds together for regional items. For example, I believe Williamstown, North Adams, and Adams, we joined up. We submitted a grant for some sheltering supplies, traffic control supplies, et cetera, and we were awarded that grant. So that's 3 communities that took a small amount of money, pooled them together, and we were able to get some good resources. For emergency management, and this goes back even in my job interview, we talked a lot about shared services. And we had the same conversation last year when we had to look at buying a pumper truck for the forest wardens. You know, those assets, when they're needed, are critical. When you need them, you want them to work, you want them serviceable, and you want them safe for the staff that uses them. But for the majority of the time, they sit on standby mode. So when we talk about emergency management, really that shared services model is important, because what other North Adams could have an issue, but Adams doesn't. Adams could have an issue, Cheshire doesn't. So really, that's what this job description is about, is making sure that the next person who we bring on board for that position is able to have that disposition and have that work ethic to tie into other communities. We have an excellent regional planning committee for emergency purposes. We've seen the model work with the health pandemic. For example, the storm, we did not open our own EOC. We again worked out of the EOC in North Adams, and thankfully we rode out the storm fairly well. But if we needed resources, we would have simply called the regional EOC, they would have gone to MEMA, and we would have had those resources deployed here to the town, as opposed to having our own staff and our own EOC open at the police station or an alternative location. We would have just been duplicating efforts. So that's kind of what the intent of this position would be going forward. It is the current model. It's the model I was trained in post 9/11. It's a model that's still in use in other communities and works well, and I think it's appropriate for a community of our size. Unfortunately, this is a stipend position. It would be great to hire somebody full-time, but this is a $2,000 annual stipend, and it does require some time and effort. So hopefully when the time comes, Emergency Management Director Kleiner, he's also Forest Warden's chief. He and I are in touch on a pretty frequent basis, but as he reminds me, I can't do it forever. So,
John, did you have anything to add as a member of that committee, or?
Well, I think the write-up was done very well. I'm all for shared services and working with other communities, but I'm also, in these type of situations, in favor of strong leadership. And I brought this up at the subcommittee that when, we had a discussion, and Jay had some good points, and you did too. But when there's an emergency in our community, I support having someone that is in Adams, who has the ability and the authority, working with the town administrator, of course, to be able to make decisions within minutes, to be able to handle whatever situation that may arise. Also, if North Adams or Williamstown needs support, that would be weighed with the situation that we have here in our own community. The shared services just concerns me a bit. No, I think it's a great program, and normally it's the way to go. But when that disaster does happen, I support having this individual being someone that can be accessed locally, that can spring into action, again, within minutes, to be able to handle any type of disaster, represent the community, be able to make decisions with our police department, with our DPW, working with the forest wardens, and then eventually working with the other communities, which we do anyways. And in any emergency, we work with the state, we work with other communities, but for this position, I support having someone that's a local person. Adams.
Yeah. And I'll just make note that, sorry. See, I tried to multitask. Shared services is not listed in the job description. It does talk a lot about coordination, planning, and so forth. This job description that's in front of everybody is specific to the town of Adams. It is an option to explore when the time comes, as a possibility of doing some shared services, but with this job description in mind. So I just wanted to make that clear, that it's not listed in here that this would be shared services. This is the duties that would be specific to what we would be looking for with regard to emergency management in the town of Adams.
this is for an Adams Emergency Management Director.
Correct.
Reporting to me, handling emergency management functions within the town of Adams, and working collaboratively with other communities.
Yeah,
With
Thank
their
you.
primary functions
for the town.
for the town of Adams.
Thank you for that clarification.
But I was gonna mention, and I liked everything about the way it was written. I liked the collaboration and all that. But I would like to see in here, in the event of an emergency, the primary focus would be Adams.
I agree. Last year's microbursts, probably two of them there. We needed people here at that time. We can't be waiting for somebody to come from North Adams or Williamstown or whatever to evaluate our situation. I think we, as a town, we handle it very well. And I think we should really try to follow that.
Well, if you look on page 2 at the top,
Yep.
provides recommendations and guidance to the town administrator and chair of the Board of Selectmen on declarations of emergency and required actions, coordinates town response with other public safety agencies consistent with NIMS and ICS protocol. NIMS stands for National Incident Management System, ICS stands for Incident Command System. Just by implication of those two, the person has to physically stand out there and do that.
Right.
So whoever reads this and is interested in the position, that's incumbent upon it. It also says establishes and maintains a local emergency operations center, shelter, and other local resources. So that's where that is. That's the response requirement. We can be more specific about it, but that was my intent. It's not a shared services position.
No.
Position is based in atoms, but they have to have a shared resource model to understand that they're sharing resources from other communities. You can't really share an emergency management director with another community, but you can share resources and plans with other communities, because one community can't handle it alone. That's the distinction, and that's me not communicating well. That's the intent of the position.
Right, well, my point was more toward someone in this line of work or expertise in general is going to be involved with, say, many different groups.
No, that's true.
So, and I just want to make sure that it's, when the proverbial poop hits the fan, that there's somebody in Adams taking care of it. I mean, the police department's going to do the police department thing, fire department's going to do the fire department thing, but we need someone also coordinating responses.
Remember, your incident commander is usually the highest ranking fire service official on scene. So during an emergency, the emergency management director will coordinate resources and be a communications individual, but usually how the operations plan is executed is usually going to be done by the incident commander, who's the highest ranking fire service officer, on there. That's one of the reasons why a lot of communities have emergency management directors who are also their fire chief, because a lot of emergency management function kind of correlates with fire. There's a little bit of overplay with police, but for the most part, your emergency management function runs pretty parallel with the fire department. So, in a perfect world, we would have somebody local who's already in public safety, to do this position. North Adams, their emergency management director is Chief Moranti. Works fairly well. So it's flexible. But the key is, to your point, Rick, is the response and being available. Because the incident commander will pick up the emergency management director's phone and say, you need to get me sandbags, you need to open a shelter, you need to do X, Y, Z, and the emergency management director will understand where he or she's resources are within that chain. Call DPW to get the sandbags. If we need additional traffic supplies, because we have to close down several roads, but we have a construction project open, so all of our cones and barricades are out, they know to call North Adams and bring down the trailer with all the regional supplies. So it's resource identification.
Yeah, if I may, I understand what Rick is saying. It goes back to, remember the test that we were given? We all took it. A gentleman came in from emergency management.
There was the ICS, the incident commander.
Right.
Yep.
Right, and he brought up that point that you have to have one person, the go-to person, because you don't want a number of different people telling each person to go in a different direction, because it becomes convoluted and things don't get done in a proper way. So I kind of concur what Rick has to say, and not being able to look at this to any extent to see where it is. I believe you just brought that up, that one person should be the go-to person at an emergency, because if you have too many cooks, it doesn't work. So if that's somewhat stated in here and it's made clear, then that's the way I believe it should be.
We'll add language, though, in there, Rick, about making sure that the person, we'll do this in the interviews anyway when we get to that point, but we can add a line in there that says, primary functions in an emergency will be to the town of Adams.
Thank you. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, simple as that, one little sentence.
Yeah.
Just so it's in there.
Yep.
Oh, no, it's in your job description.
Well, you make a good point that, the mindset for people who are interested in this work are all usually public safety related. So they're already paramedics, police officers, firemen, they could teach, there's a variety of different backgrounds that somebody might be interested in. I was involved in emergency management when I was in law school and while I was in the police academy. So during an emergency, I could have been called up by the sheriff's department to respond, but I was also a deputy emergency management director for City of Chicopee. So there's a conflict right there to your point.
So with that change, shall we bring this back to the board? Once that change has been made to the job description? Is that the consensus? Okay.
May I just take a step backwards? The Community Development Director, I see it's grade level 14. Donna was paid in a different manner, wasn't she, for the grants that she received, or did she get an upfront salary?
She's paid off the budget, off salary.
Okay. So that remains consistent?
Yes.
Okay.
I think originally she was off the grants, and then it was changed, wasn't it?
I believe so,
And I think
that's why I brought that up.
Yes.
The town,
The staff in the community development office are, outside of the director, are off of grants for the most part, except for half of
Half of the land use administrative assistant is off the community development budget and a community development director. All the other positions are funded through administrative fees off the grants. Which, as you know from a budgeting standpoint, makes it hard to predict to be able to keep staff, because if you don't earn those grants, and those grants don't have administrative costs in them, you don't have the funds to keep the staff.
So we will make the changes as requested to the emergency management director position and bring that back at a future meeting. Okay. All right. That brings us to the appointment of fence viewers. So the board remembers at our June 2019 town meeting authorized the Board of Selectmen to appoint annually the position of fence viewers. This is in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 49, Section 1. Working with the town clerk, she was able to put together the post for people to respond to with regard to stepping forward to be fence viewers. And Deb Dunlap helped with putting that out on Facebook. We did get 2 requests for fence viewer in time for the posting of this meeting, and we got a 3rd request today. In talking with the town clerk, we are able to appoint all 3. However, I will have to hold off on the 3rd until another meeting. I believe the town clerk told me it's better to have more than none. Currently, we are operating with no fence viewers. So in front of you, the interested parties are Andrew Goyette. Andrew is a licensed electrician and licensed construction supervisor, has lived in the town of Adams for over 45 years, and is interested in serving as a fence viewer. The other one is Timothy Zimba. I think that there's been a Zimba serving as a fence viewer for as long as I think the Zimbas have been in this community. So Tim has stepped forward. Probably know him from Zimba Farm, but also is a first assistant engineer for the Adams Fire Department, and is a lifelong resident of the town of Adams. So both have stepped forward to serve as fence viewers. So I put that in front of the board for your action this evening.
Madam Chair, could you please explain what a fence viewer's role is?
You want me to? Would you like me to read the Mass General Law?
for the audience's education.
All that comes up is that we can appoint it according to Mass General Law, but it is a property dispute
I would ask
position.
town council to,
Ed, you could probably be much more eloquent than I could be, so I'm going to turn this over to you. That's my summation of it.
Well, fence viewers are used to try to settle disputes between property owners in a way that allows for example, the placement of fences to prevent cattle from wandering from one property to another. That's been a dispute that I've seen happen in another community to the south of us. And they basically have, limited authority, but they try to reach compromises between neighbors who might be feuding over relatively minor matters with respect to fences, what the fences look like, that type of thing. There's other issues with fences that are controlled by zoning and by the building commissioner's office, which they don't address. But I think it's just an effort by law to have people there trying to settle differences between neighbors.
See, I told you he'd be much more eloquent. I just said it settled disputes. What is the board's pleasure with regard to the appointment of fence viewers?
I'll make a motion that the board appoint Timothy Zimba and Andrew Goyette to the positions of fence viewers for the town of Adams.
I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Second by Jim. And just wanted to let the board know that this going forward would be handled as part of the annual appointments in June. It was just that this is the first year that we were supposed to do it, and it didn't make it to the annual appointments list, but we'll be there going forward. So that's the timing issue. So if there's no other discussion,
Yeah, I would
I'm sorry,
just-
Joe.
Well, it's not a discussion, it's just a comment. That's what makes New England interesting. That goes back to colonial times when there were a lot of disputes about pasturing and fence, so it gives some flavor to us here in New England.
Us. Wait until we get to the next one.
Yeah.
So, if there's no other discussion, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. So I appreciate Andy and Tim stepping forward. And for a future meeting, I do have another name and application that has come forward, but that came today, and we couldn't get it on the agenda in time. So it's a very popular position with regard to the town, so it's good. The next one is the appointment of measure of wood and bark, again at the June 2019 town meeting. The town meeting members authorized the Board of Selectmen to appoint annually one measure of wood and bark. This is in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 94, Section 296. This again would be an annual appointment going forward, and the timing would be in June that we would be doing this. I can just preemptively ask Town Council if he would like to speak about the measure of wood and bark. And while he's unmuting himself, I will just once again thank the town clerk for putting together the posting and for having Deb Dunlap put that out on Facebook, which I know sparked a lot of conversation about what is a measure of wood and bark. So with that introduction, I will turn it over to Town Council to just speak a little bit about this other New England tradition.
Well, it's one of those old and ancient positions recognized by the Commonwealth. It's a position where the measurer determines the volume or amount of the designated products in a form that's provided by the State Director of Standards. I'm reading that, and that's all I know about it.
Thank you very much. The application that is in front of the Board of Selectmen is a name that's no stranger to the board. Bruce Shepley has stepped forward to serve in this capacity. Bruce is a retired registered nurse. also military flight nurse, long history in emergency management. I know he's been working up at the regional EOC recently. He also serves on the Cemetery Commission, the Council on Aging Board of Directors, and also holds a seat on the Northern Berkshire Vocational Regional School District, serving the town of Adams, previously on the Board of Health, and has been a resident of the town of Adams since 1984. So I put before the board the application for Bruce Shepley to serve as the measurer of wood and bark.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Bruce Shepley as the measure of wood and bark.
I have a motion by Jim. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Rick. Any discussion? Yes, go ahead.
Just a curiosity question. When is the last time that the Adams measurer of wood and bark has had to do anything?
It seems like a trivia question for like a...
No, I have no idea. I'm just curious, does this position actually have to do something, or is it one of those paper things?
Doesn't he have something to do with like lumber yards to measure and make sure that things are the way they should be coming out of a lumber yard? Say you're buying a 10-foot board, it should be a 10-foot board. I'm quite sure he's kind of like the measure of liquids. He goes around to the gas stations, measures a gallon of gas out to make sure you're getting a gallon of gas. And I'm pretty sure he's involved with that also.
I don't know how busy we kept Mr. It was Mr. Slazik, right? Is that who served Haley?
What Jim just described was a measure of weights and measures. That's a little bit different than what the wood and bark person would do. I would assume that it has something to do with the logging industry to some extent, just by the nature of the position. And it's one of those things that are created by statute that we just have to live with year after year until the legislature says we don't need it anymore.
Okay? Stand corrected.
That's okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Okay. I had to remember where we were on this. So I do have a motion and a second. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstention? That is unanimous. So we thank Bruce for stepping forward. That brings us to the annual town election worker appointments, and why I believe the town clerk has been hanging on with us this evening, although she's no stranger to our meetings. So in your packet, I'll read the letter. Dear Chairman Hoyt, it is the time of year when the Adams Board of Selectmen needs to appoint election workers for the upcoming year. There will be 3 elections: the September 1st primary, the November 3rd election, and the annual town election in May of 2021. The Democratic and Republican town committees have been notified as required by law for their input. Attached is a list of election workers for your board's endorsement. This list represents those persons who have worked at Adams elections in the past and wish to continue serving the community, and also incorporates new election workers. The appointments need to be made by August 15th, 2020, and will become effective on September 1st for a period of 1 year. I'm also asking the Selectmen to vote to authorize the town clerk to make emergency election worker appointments. This becomes necessary when all people on the list are contacted and are not available to work. These vacancies usually occur during the weekend prior to an election. Respectfully submitted, Town Clerk Haley Mezawar. Town Clerk has provided us a list of the 2020-2021 election workers. It is a list of, I think I counted 76 individuals who have agreed to serve in our elections. And I will turn things over to the Town Clerk if you wanted to add something, and as while you're unmuting yourself, I will just remind the board that the Town Clerk is asking for 2 actions by the Board of Selectmen this evening. 1, to appoint the election workers as submitted, and the other item is to authorize the town clerk to make emergency election worker appointments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So Haley, if you wanted to add a little bit more about this appointment, now's your time.
I don't think I have anything else to add. It's the annual letter.
It is. Okay. And how many new members do you have? It says that you have a few new ones on this list.
I'd say about 5.
Okay.
5 new people that have expressed an interest in working at the polls, which I'm very grateful for,
Absolutely.
especially with the November election coming right around the corner.
What is the board's pleasure with regard to?
Could I ask Haley one question,
Sure.
please?
Go ahead, Joe.
Haley, just out of curiosity, I think I've asked you this one time before. How do you choose who's the first, second, or third person you call? The pecking order, in other words. Is it people that have, like, quote, seniority who have done it longer periods of time?
Yeah. If they've done it for a period of time and I want to call them seasoned poll workers,
Right.
Then I contact them first and then work my way down. And with the way, the past election went, I actually had a couple of new ones, but they worked out great. I mean, everybody has done a phenomenal job, but with the November election coming up, certainly having seasoned poll workers there will be a key to a successful election.
Yeah, and just quickly, what is your take on mail-in for the November election?
Well, I can give you a short update on what we've already started to get in for mail-in applications. We sent out 3 of the precincts today in the mail for people who have requested mail-in ballots for the September primary. Hopefully tomorrow we will finish up the other 2 precincts and then tackle all of our absentee ballots. We will, at this point, we have over 1,000 ballots that we will be mailing for the September primary.
Wow.
As you probably can imagine, some people are just requesting the November ballot, so that's, at this point, we probably have received about 200 of those that have already come in the mail. So it's going to be a very, very busy election season for September and then again in November. And just as a side note, if anybody is listening at home, there's the mail-in voting, absentee or early voting, whatever way you want to call it, but the state is also requiring us to do in-person early voting. So I will be at probably your next televised meeting in 2 weeks explaining and going back over that, but beginning on Saturday, August 22nd, we will start in-person early voting, and that will go through Thursday, August 27th. And more information will be up on our website, and I'm sure the state will be putting out information. But if people don't feel comfortable doing mail-in voting, certainly, and they don't feel comfortable coming to the polls, but I can say our polls are very, very safe. We've taken every precaution necessary, but there will be early voting in Town Hall starting on Saturday, August 22nd, and Sunday, August 23rd, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday of that week prior to the election. And again, we will do in-person voting for the November election, but that'll be over a 2-week period.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will make a motion that the board approve the 2021 election workers as provided by town clerk.
I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Jim. Any discussion on the appointment of the election workers? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Or an abstention? That is unanimous. The second item town clerk asked us to do is to authorize her to make emergency election worker appointments in the event that she goes through the list and can't find anyone.
I'll make a motion that the board authorize town clerk to make emergency election worker appointments.
I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Jim. Any discussion on the emergency appointments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, Haley.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us down to the department reports, and the first report is the town administrator, so Mr. Green, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Just a few things. First of all, I'm pleased to report tonight that your town administrator has been accepted into the Massachusetts Municipal Association Suffolk University Municipal Finance Management Seminar for 2020. This is a seminar that deals specifically with municipal finance issues and concerns for those who practice municipal finance, which everyone knows is a very unique bear. So that'll be every Friday through November and December. So I just got notice today that I was accepted for that. DPW Director Tober reports that the transfer station cameras are being installed presently, and we do have one camera operating up there, with the second camera or third camera coming online soon. Myself and Chief Bacon will be performing patrol officer interviews tomorrow. This will be, we're looking for 3 police officers to replace the 3 retired folks that we have, so we'll be conducting those. Very briefly, how the town handled the tropical storm that came through yesterday. We had an emergency management team meeting on Monday afternoon. We assembled the emergency management director, forest wardens, police, Adams Fire District. We had code enforcement, building inspector there, and the water district was present. We had a good conversation. We had established some communication channels. We knew North Adams the regional planning committee was going to open the regional EOC, and thankfully we fared pretty well. DPW had to come in for approximately 2 hours last night just to clear some branches and some trees, but other than that, there were no other reported issues. The worst effect was mass broadband went out for a good chunk of time late last night and wasn't restored until sometime early this afternoon. That was the worst, so we dodged another significant bullet. I had no reports of any significant flooding, so I'd like to thank all of our residents who went out there and cleared off the storm drains, and of course to the DPW team that went out and took a look at some of our pinch points that we have in the stormwater system to keep all of that system operating as well. Fiscal 20 numbers, fiscal 21 numbers, so the long-awaited information from the state has finally come through. We've been trying to hone in on our state aid number. That's been the number that we've been waiting to get. The state has indicated that they are going to hold state aid allocations, or cherry sheet and Chapter 70 for the schools, at the fiscal 20 numbers. So what that means is we now have a solid figure that we can budget and plan for. We've done some quick math. I don't want anyone to hang their hat on these numbers, but if you recall, we had kind of thrown around a number of looking at a 10% reduction in state aid, and that could have been upwards of $250,000. So we're going to be far less than that, probably maybe around $70,000 to $80,000 that we have to look for in that budget. So this just was solidified last week. The town accountant has been quite busy with a few other projects, as myself, but we're going to try to dig into that next week. We'll establish a budget subcommittee, and I can tell you that I sleep a little bit better knowing that it's not so deep cuts that we have to. I think we can handle that without impacting the labor force or service delivery to the constituent base. How the schools are going to work, we still have to analyze that. Right now, they're on the 112 system, so we still have some auditing and accounting to look at in terms of how that's going to roll in, but we'll address that. This is a brave new world for everybody, but at least both the school districts, our 2 districts, and the town, we now have those numbers to look at. So I would anticipate for timing, again, it's up to the board, but I would anticipate at this point a town meeting in September. We'll probably go back to the outdoor model, would be my guess, because of the gathering restrictions, indoor restrictions. That's still the only way physically to do it, is to do it outside, but we'll have that conversation again. You can see if the communities that have moved forward have had success with that model. I see no reason why Adams can't do that. But we'll have to start looking at that over the next few weeks. If you also recall, we may have talked about this at the last meeting, I don't remember, but we have our 40R warrant article to discuss. We have zoning changes, and I can tell you right now that we've got some interest in development in Adams, and I think it would be in our community's best interest to move forward with these items. So as much as the board, I know, had been discussing, kind of separate the normal warrant request separate from the special items, I don't know if time is going to be on our side with that. So I mentioned that tonight for the board's contemplation to think about and perhaps set that by our next meeting.
But Jay, we will have to approve a 1/12 budget for the month of September.
Yes.
Since we won't have a town meeting before that. So I'll work with Mary to see the appropriate date to do that.
See where our timing is.
Okay. Any questions for the town administrator?
Yes, just one quick question. I believe, was the lottery money released?
The lottery money?
Yeah.
The only thing I heard about lottery money was the lottery fiscal 20 amount was identified, but I don't think it was released.
It
I think
wasn't released,
I think
okay.
just the accounting number. They had a banner year from what I
Right.
read from State House News Service.
So numbers haven't been released, okay.
Any other questions?
Not, I should say, not that I know of, Joe.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Go ahead, John.
Just briefly, Jay, I assume that the budget process will follow the same general guidelines, but the amount of time that is spent on the overview of the budgets will be reduced because we've been through this once before, so it really will be the new state numbers and the reductions and then moving on to the next step.
I think we can probably try again. I think the selectmen can probably work by themselves and the finance committee can work by themselves, or we can try a joint meeting again. I have to talk to Attorney St. John about it, and we have to continue to read the DOR guidelines that are coming out, but I would think that the only sections we have to go through would be those sections, like you say, John, that we've changed or reduced or modified. The Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen had approved each chapter and have approved the overall 21 budget, so we're in good shape there. But I think it's good form to say, let's say we reduce a particular item or change something around, that should be reviewed once again. So hopefully we can tailor down what we put in front of the respective boards, excuse me.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that, Jay. So that brings us to town council. And this time I did manage to get your report in time, and Deb helped me to make sure that it got printed and put at everyone's seats. So, go ahead.
All right, well, since my last report on July 22nd, I reviewed and commented on a public record request. I responded to and provided a response to a request for advice concerning the process used for a dangerous dog hearing. I responded to a citizen's request for access to the recordings of the Board of Health hearings. I attended a meeting between several private citizens and staff. I attended a meeting with staff and researched several legal questions that arose from that meeting. I responded to a request for advice from the code enforcement officer. And I attended and participated in today's Board of Health meeting, which was aborted because of an issue that arose with respect to the posting of the agenda. It was primarily due to the fact that people calling in could not call in because the password that was posted on the agenda was incorrect. So that meeting is going to be continued for 2 weeks so that the agenda is done up properly for people who want to participate remotely.
So that's been rescheduled, you said, for 2 weeks?
On August 19th, yes.
Okay. And I just wanted to comment for the board, the item with regard to the dangerous dog hearing, that has been scheduled for Tuesday, August 11th at 6 p.m. And the notification was sent. And those materials are being put together and will be sent electronically and then printed. Any comments or questions for legal counsel? It's all quiet in here. Thanks, Ed.
You're welcome.
All right, that brings us to subcommittee and liaison reports. I'll give Peter a break behind the camera, and I will start over here with Member Duval if you have anything.
I'm good.
I have nothing for subcommittee and liaison reports. We talked about personnel subcommittee meeting last week. So, Member Bush.
I have a meeting tomorrow morning with Mike Canales and excuse me, concerning the charm program going on between North Adams and Adams. I think we're going to be laying out guidelines and possibly moving forward. So,
Jim, just on that too, in terms of Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management District, Linda did send me a copy of the new contract, but it might be good to have a presentation at a televised meeting.
yeah, I will be getting a copy tomorrow. I have to sign it tomorrow also. So,
Rick? Did you have?
I think nothing. We had a public safety meeting, but I think I reported out on that last week, didn't
No, I don't.
I don't think so.
I? All right, we had a,
No, last week was only a workshop. And we met Tuesday morning.
had a public safety subcommittee meeting. Well, nothing really to report out on.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, I just have something about, I don't know, time flies, but maybe about 2 weeks ago, I took a tour with John Barrett, the head of the Adams Fire District, and we went to all the pumping stations, and he gave me an overview of how our water system works and where our aquifers are, and I was quite impressed, and I think we all feel that way when John comes in front of us. It seems like he has a really good feel of the pulse of the water. But one thing that really surprised me is, and to me this is very crucial, because of our infrastructure, he has leak detectors, and they estimate that 1/4 of our water is leaking. So 24%. So that's just showing the infrastructure problems that our community has. And he's also worried when they do the reconstruction of Route 8, because the main trunk of our water line goes right down. It comes out, the old road near where the Grove Street Bridge is, it goes there because that was the lead-in-way, and the water goes underneath the bridge, but then it comes out on a main thoroughfare that's going to be redone, and he worries about the compaction and all of the work that's going to be done there, because if that pipe is to burst, the town will be without water. But that was of some interest to me. That just shows, and I think we all know that the infrastructure in this communities and others have been neglected for such a long period of time, and when you're losing 1/4 of your water through leaks, that's definitely not a good thing. So, and I was very surprised to see how well all the components were in the pumping stations. They all were up to code. He pointed out, as was done to me at the wastewater treatment, some kinks, some things that are needed to be taken care of, but overall, it was a good tour. It was something that I never did before, and his big worry is that we have too many moving parts. 8 pumping stations are a lot of pumping stations, so the more pumping stations you have, the more chance you have of equipment breakdown and so on and so forth. But to me, that was something of interest. And on subcommittees, and Ed can help me in on this, our Adams Suffragette Centennial Celebration Committee, I finally learned how to say that. We're going to be dedicating the statue, and we don't want to have many people there. Our talk was to have just 20 because we want to go with the COVID. So I was asked, and I thought it was going to be on today's agenda, who the board thinks should be invited, because some of the members, myself, I'm not going to go because I think that You know, I want to have other people there, and so I think some of the members are going to forego going so that other people may go. So I was asked as the liaison and a selectman to ask board members who they felt, for instance, you know, John Barrett, Adam Hines, Richie Neal, who do you think should be invited? And we want to try to keep it to 20 because we're very cognizant of the pandemic, and we don't want an over amount of people in one area. So if that could be something that could be brought to the forefront, who you think should be there, and I think we can take care of who can, you know, do the talks, because I know some of our members are going to be there, but myself, I'm going to not attend, because I just don't think that, you know, myself added, and I think there may be other members who feel the same way because it's for the community. So if we could get a gauge on that. Ed, do you have anything to add? I mean, you're close to the chairman. Can Ed hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Joe, I don't have anything to add. You said it correctly.
That's what we were thinking, right?
Right.
Okay.
I can tell you it's a recommendation from town staff that not any event take place until construction is done over there. Donna and Becky expressed some concern about open trench areas, and we really have to kind of take it one day at a time over there. Do we have a date yet, as we know when the statue's going to actually be
Well,
delivered?
we've heard early September, if I'm not mistaken, Ed, right? And that, at least in my opinion, and Ed, please chime in, that we can't make the sculptor of that statue hold it. You know, we still owe him $20,000, which we have. And until that statue is in place, he doesn't get the retainer money. So we really, I believe, Ed, is that true, that statue has to be put in place at the time that Brian Hanlon would like it installed?
So first of all, we don't know for sure when he's going to have the statue ready. You know, he talked about late August and some early September.
Right.
We have to talk to him about when it's going to go in place. The contract does provide things about what if we're not ready and storage and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we ought to get into it until we know for sure when he's ready and when the town's ready. And maybe all of that will come together at the same time.
Let us hope.
Let us hope.
Okay, I think, let's see, that's all I have, I can think of anyways.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Announcements and go to the order. John, anything?
Good, thank you.
Okay. Jim?
I'm good.
Rick?
Good.
Yeah, I'd like to make an announcement. I want to bring it to the public that I was given a cease and desist order for work across the street from my house by the Conservation Commission for work that I'm doing in the Miller Brook to try to bring back an ecosystem that has been sorely lost. My whole life I lived, since I've been 2 years old, up at my home on Hoosick Street, and the Miller Brook was a big part of my life. And our town no longer has any riparian zones that are of, people can't even see rivers. This noxious Japanese knotweed has taken a toll. I apologize, because being on a commission for 30 years, I should have known better. And I apologize to my fellow selectmen, because we are the permitting group in this community. My intentions were good. I did everything environmentally safe. My advanced degree in environmental science tells me how to do things and how to do it. But I think this community really needs to put its foot down and do something for the ecology of our waterways. I mean, it's a shame to see, as you walk down any street and see this Japanese knotweed taking over the ecosystems. It has no holding power for banks. That's why during flooding times, the banks are caving in because it has no root structure. And you can see in the upland areas where I did my work, and any time near water, I used a steel shovel to try to dig out. I'm not going to go into it long. I'm looking very forward to going in front of the Conservation Commission because, once again, something has to be done. Knotweed is the most invasive plant. It's doing havoc to New England. It's taking prices away from homes, and I was out there in the open. It was nothing I was hiding. I put in over 200 hours of my time digging it up. You have to dig it up. It's got rhizome roots, meaning that they creep along, and as they creep, they pop out leaders. And if you don't get all of those out, just a 1-inch piece of left there will re-root. And already, all the work that I did, I disposed of everything properly. I have bamboo shoots coming up, and it's known as Godzilla weed. And any environmentalist that you speak to will tell you that it's really, just so much. It's got so many negative connotations to the environment, to homeowners, and everything, that there are groups that specifically people pay to go out there, and still it can't be eradicated. But I want to publicly apologize to everyone. I did it out in the open, I think in my overzealousness, because I want to see a river that I used to live in where there used to be fish. There's no crayfish. It's becoming no longer, there are still natives I've seen them. I made some pools during the restoration. There are small natives, but you won't see a crayfish, and in time, it's no longer going to be a cold water fishery. So I apologize. The Conservation Commission did the right thing, but I want to say lastly that during my time there was only one woman who came, and I was far away from the water, very carefully, using Roundup, which
Member Novak, I'm going to stop you there so that you can share that with the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
I just want to protect you
Well,
on
I
that.
just want to say that I apologize to everyone, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm not sorry what I'm trying to do to restore an ecosystem.
Thank you for the apology.
Yeah?
The only item I have, just as a reminder, that our next meeting will be on Tuesday, August 11th at 6 p.m. in this room. It will be a dangerous dog hearing. At this point, I'm looking not to have a meeting on Wednesday, August 12th, since we will be meeting the night before on the 11th. But if something should change, I will notify all of you that we would need to meet.
Madam Chairman, I just had two quick questions.
Certainly.
Because you stopped me there, but I had a question for you. When are we going to get the sheet? So, I mean, Jay needs to be, it's long overdue, and each time I've asked, it's going to be, well, I'm doing it, it's going to be next week, it's going to be next week. I think it's time for
I've actually never given a date.
Okay.
I've just told you that I just haven't had the time to put into that, to give a thoughtful look at some of the other models. I've requested models from other communities of how they've evaluated their town administrator. I've gone back to the goals that we set last July, and I'm trying to put together a thoughtful evaluation form to then bring it to Administrator Green as well as this board to make sure it's a thoughtful process. If we don't have a meeting next week, I'm hoping to get to it.
Okay, could you just give me what you feel would be a time frame for it?
I hope to be in the month of August.
Okay, and my last question is to you, John. Did you ever get an answer about that bridge project?
I did not, Joe, and I
Okay.
apologize for
All right,
that.
yep, okay,
I'll
very
take that
good.
too.
And
So-
that's all I have.
Great. Next on our agenda is an executive session. It is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. It is to review the contract for local number 204, state council number 93, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFL-CIO. It is our clerical unit. The town administrator has notified me that approval of the contract is not something that will be asked of the board this evening, so it will be an information session during executive session. So if the board so chooses to go into executive session, we would just be coming out of that for the purposes of adjourning only.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the reason that was just stated by your correspondence, unless you would like me to read it.
Nope, that's okay. I have a motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Rick. This is a roll call vote. Joe?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
It is a yes from Christine, so that is unanimous. We'll go into executive session. I do ask for a 5-minute